Chapter 41. Getting an Education. Mid-1930s. Up to snuff, or kaolia, slang for acceptable. He thought her cornbread was up to snuff. The winter in 1935 gave a little prospect of taming down. While the drought continued in most of the Midwest, there was extreme winter also. Woodward Ranch, Texas, on May 31, 1935, set a record for most rain in 2 hours of 15 inches, and also the record for the most rain in 2 hours and 45 minutes, with 22 inches of rain. Additionally, Florida was hit by a Category 5 hurricane on Labor Day 1935, which killed more than 500 people. The storm surge was 20 feet high and washed an evacuation train out to sea. There was too much rain in some places and not enough in most. It was before anyone knew the term climate change. During the winter months of 1934-35, Earl Harness, who had completed the 5th grade level at the Bohannon School on Bear Creek, went to live with his grandpa Giles Turney on the mountain at Welcome Home, where he could complete his 6th and 7th grades. Giles had lost Jody in 1933, and his daughters, Melinda and Dolly, had both married. His first set of boys had died the same week in 1907, and that left him with 2 younger boys, Rube and Dolphus. After losing family members and $600 in the bank, Giles, who was 55 years old, welcomed his grandson Earl to live, work, and get his education. Anxious to get in the field to do work, Giles cooked an egg for Earl and gave him a slice of cold cornbread left over from before. Earl didn't touch his cornbread, and when they got up from the table to go do chores, Giles said to his grandson Earl, "Take that cornbread and put it on a stump in the field, and you'll come to it." That day, Earl learned something from the school of life. When you work and get hungry, you will come to appreciate what you didn't want before. The image of cornbread on a stump has made me reevaluate many instances of life. Giles's 2 boys, Rube and Dolphus, were ornery, and they liked to scare Earl for entertainment. They'd make up stories and pull pranks on anyone they could have a laugh at. Earl said they would wake him up in the morning by smothering him with a pillow till he thought he would suffocate to death. When they finally let up and he could get his breath, they would laugh as Earl gasped for air to catch his breath. It was a prank that made him jump out of bed at the first sound of Giles getting up. It was considered meanness and boys being boys in those days, and little was done about it. Some saw roughness as a way to toughen and prepare the young for a cruel world, but fortunately, such behavior is considered abuse and a crime today. The Turney boys pulled shenanigans on neighbors, too. One young man was going to borrow an old car to take his girlfriend on a ride. The car had no brakes, so he had to downshift on hills and anticipate stops. Rube and Dolphus took some old clothes and stuffed them with hay to make a strawman and placed him in a narrow of the road between 2 trees at the bottom of a hill. When the sparking couple came down the road in the dark, all the driver could do was run over the man's legs that were sticking out into the road. The scared couple got the car stopped, and the young man ran back to see how much harm he had done. Rube and Dolphus came out of the woods busting their sides laughing. Despite the mischief and chores that Earl endured before and after school, he walked about a mile in the winter weather to attend school. His mother, Melinda, had attended school at Welcome Home, and so had her brothers Rube and Dolphus. On day, Rube saw a boy beating on his brother Dolphus out on the schoolyard. Rube warned the boy not to do it again, but soon thereafter he saw the boy beating on his brother again. Rube yelled at the boy, who took off running to escape being whipped himself. Rube reached down for a rock, and as the boy ran slightly parallel, he calculated how much to lead him and let his rock fly. The throw had perfect timing as the rock and the boy's head came together. Rube said he fell like a rabbit that had been shot. After he recovered from being stoned, the boy never picked on Dolphus again. The Welcome Home School had only chalk and slate for writing and math. There was no school money for paper or pencils. With only limited books, reading and history was given aloud. Older grades sat at the back of the room and the early grades toward the front. A single teacher was assigned to educate 30-40 students. If a student didn't want to learn, there was little that a teacher could do to help them. Just because a student attended school did not mean that they were educated to the level of their attendance grade. Similar to attending church service today, some excel in knowledge, while some retain little. Earl's younger brothers Troy and Clifford didn't like school the way Earl did, but attending class meant that they could get out of farm work. So, as they were marking time, Clifford calculated that they needed to slow down with their education, or they would graduate 5th grade and be back full-time on the farm. Clifford, being older and the biggest of the boys, was approaching the height of his teacher before he completed 5th grade at 13 years old. All the boys attended some school the next year in Oklahoma. School terms were from 3 to 4 months, and some years there wasn't money to have school or only a partial term. Earl was 20 years old before he completed high school, due to the lack of available education from the economic hardship of the 1930s. FDR's New Deal provided programs to help employ people who couldn't find a job. The NYA, National Youth Administration, gave men and women from the ages of 18 to 25 some jobs. One of the projects was to build a gymnasium at Whit Springs Public School and one at Marshall. Loans were available to farmers to buy seed, feed, or equipment. The WPA, Works Progress Administration, constructed roads and bridges in Searcy County. They also built outdoor privies that allowed for nicer and more private facilities. The REA, Rural Electrification Administration, slowly brought electricity to remote Searcy County, but not to Upper Bear Creek, as long as Riley Harness lived there. These relief programs were designed to help Americans by providing jobs and services. It began an inclination to socialize and create a bureaucracy of our government with dependency for more and more assistance. In August of 1935, FDR signed the Social Security Act to help those over 65 years old, with a pension to be funded by a payroll tax. A welfare program was started to help children under 16, the elderly, or those who were blind or crippled, but many in rural areas had been in poverty for a decade or more. These programs gave relief, but could do nothing for those who had already perished or were in such poor health that the relief did little to keep them alive. Imagine a boy having to take turns with a sister eating. One would eat, and the other had to wait. You foraged for wild sources of food. Dandelions with some hog lard and cornmeal made into cakes was a feast to those in hunger. Many were physically and economically poor. Riley Harness's older sister, Arizona, was in great poverty due to their small and poor farm. He helped when he could to supplement his sisters and their families. When the food assistants came to the area offering handout food, he gave what was allotted his family to Arizona's family. As more people left Searcy County in search of a new home, the pressure on the wild resources decreased, but their number had been driven to low levels, and their recovery would be slow, or never. A wild deer, turkey, or bear was never seen by Earl Harness growing up. The bison and elk had been nearly extinct, and the raccoon was rare. Fish in the creek were small, and animals with valuable pelts were hard to come by. Acorns were a great source of food for many wild animals, but free-ranging hogs were taking most of them. The pressure on sources of food and money were depleted. Thankfully, the chickens continued to scratch and find food, and with food scraps and a little corn, the eggs were nutritious and great for bartering. Melinda liked Garrett's snuff, and she would send Earl down to Mr. Lloyd's store where he could trade eggs for snuff. Earl tried growing a tobacco crop on some new ground across the creek. He said that it came up and was growing really good as he was excited to have a cash crop. However, as it was maturing, he went to check on it, and the tobacco hornworms had devoured it. Because the worm develops so quickly and eats nonstop, you must find and remove them quickly, or they will chew your basher for you. The hornworm can be given to the chickens to convert into making eggs, which can then be traded for basher. It's all about timing, as Earl had to learn, and his education came from more than just school. Upon writing this book, I planted some tobacco in my garden for the experience of growing it. Growing this plant had been so much a part of the culture of people living in the Ozark Hills, I wanted to watch it grow and reflect on how so many cherished it. Besides, who knows? Maybe someday a plug of backer might be worth more than our paper money. The horned tobacco worm soon found out that I was growing their favorite food, and for entertainment, I took a black light at night and looked for worms with the grandkids. They actually glow in the dark, a turquoise color under a black light. Reflection. Projects not only give us something to do or means to earn money, but they also teach us skills and perhaps a trade. Learning to build, make, or grow things is fundamental to having a rounded education. When those skills are not learned, the student, regardless of their book learning, is not taught practical aspects of life, nor how to live independently. Learning to sharpen an axe can make life much easier and productive. If the axe is dull and one does not sharpen the edge, then he must use more strength. But wisdom brings success. Ecclesiastes 10:10